Sorry guys, just give me 1 second. My pages are all boxed. There we go. Oh no, all the screens are broken. Okay, bear with me 1 second guys, sorry. This is not working as it should. Oh no, that's my bad. Technology. There we go. Okay, here we go. I think everything's working. I think it sounds good. I think we're up now. So, that was Kurtis' Reel, so let me introduce us properly. Hello and welcome to The Animates, the show for animators by animators. We run every Sunday at 4 PM Eastern Time and try and bring you some content that will help you become a better animator. And today we have Kurtis Paddock on, so say hi.
Hello! Welcome everybody.
Yes.
What's happening to the Animates crew and the crowd out there?
Yes, thank you so much. So what you just saw was Kurtis' amazing reel. And he has had the honor of working at Blizzard Entertainment for 15 years. 15 whole years. So I can't wait to get in and ask you some questions about how you got to that point. Blizzard is your only credit right now, so you got in to the big leagues and just stuck around.
I got lucky. I got super lucky. I went to school for animation back from 2000 to 2003 at the Art Institute, and then it took me about 8 months to finally find a position that I wanted to apply for the game industry. In between there, I worked at an art paper supply store, cutting canvas and other papers for artists for about 8 months before I saw an opportunity to apply online for a game tester position at Blizzard Entertainment for a game called World of Warcraft.
Oh, what's that game? I haven't...
Yeah, well, honestly, I had never heard of World of Warcraft either.
Really?
I had never played an MMORPG, let alone knew what an MMORPG was. Back then, I was big into... I played Warcraft 3, but I was more into the first-person shooters type of games. So when I got hired in there in 2004, and they sat me down in front of this game, they're like, okay, look, you're going to have this zone on this continent, and we need you to go through it and look for art bugs. So that's I kind of banked on, like, look, I can find all your art bugs, so please hire me. So I went, hold on, what do you mean continent? Like, oh, well, there's 2 continents on this game. You're on the first one called Eastern Kingdoms, and there's another one called Kelmendor. And I went, what? Why are there continents on this game? I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
How big
so I got
is
my
this
start.
map? Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And the guy that was training me, who's now a producer there, was just like, "Welcome to game testing, dude. Get your head straight."
Yeah. Wow.
Here we go. Here
what
we go.
An introduction.
Yeah, I got lucky. I was the first tester to test out the Hunter class in Vanilla WoW.
Nice.
And then I was on night crew, so I worked from 7 PM to 4 AM Monday through Friday. And then at the time, there was no night crew for the weekend OT shift. So, of course, when I got there, they were full on in the crunch, getting ready for release. And we had to shift our night crew from Saturday mornings from 10 AM to 4 PM, and then flip back on Mondays back to 7 PM to 4 AM on night crew. It was absolutely insane. And I got my feet wet on that first job. I kind of learned what crunch was really fast.
Yeah.
You kind of got a little bit of taste in college, I feel like. There was plenty of art classes like color theory where I had those 24-hour, 48-hour shifts of just trying to do 150 color swatches in a week. So I thought I knew what crunch was until I actually started.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully we don't see those anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that's
Those
nice.
crazy
So
crunch
they
days,
evolved a bit.
those are gone. Thank goodness, yeah. The production and the scheduling has evolved tenfold since the Wild Wild West days, I call them.
I like that.
Oh my goodness! I mean, we were doing tests on paper checklists. Like we weren't even using online checklists or anything like that. It was
Right.
all paper. So we killed thousands upon thousands of trees every day. Um, yeah, it was ridiculous. So I was a tester from 2004 to 2008,
Wow.
and then I got my first jump
So
into
4 years. 4 years
for
of
four
QA.
years. I made it up to an assistant project lead, working on StarCraft Ghost for about 2 years, and then World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King for about 2 years. And then I got my foot in the door in cinematics, finally. I had met a animator on the StarCraft Ghost team, who back then was Swingin' Ape Studios, was the company working on that. And when they got bought by Blizzard, we absorbed most of that team, and some of that team got moved to cinematics. So I had these great networks that just happened to go to cinematics, and they had this job for a face effects animator, which I had never heard of.
Right.
But I was like, animator job, entry level, yes please, get me in there.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes to all check boxes. So a good friend, Scott Goffman, got me in as an interview. I had a big interview with him and another senior producer, which was nerve-wracking. And I got hired into cinematics in 2008. And I was doing face effects, which is just animating this much of the face. No eyes, no eyebrows, just the nose, the cheeks, and the lips, and the mouth, jaw. And I animated every single piece of lip sync that StarCraft 2 had to offer for the in-game cinematics. So if there's a character that talks in the cinematics,
That was
I
you.
got to animate that. Yeah.
Nice.
Comes
Hell of
from
an
the
education.
Swarm. Oh my goodness, it was quite of a jump in the industry. I had never touched lip sync animation going into this, and they're like, "Hey, you're going to be doing nothing but lip sync.
Yeah.
So here's 2 weeks to learn the program, and then let me know if you got any questions."
Wow.
But the team was great. I had the greatest leads and the greatest supervisors that really helped me, and really kind of simplified how I approach lip sync animation.
Okay.
At the start, I was very much like, I need to put a jaw flap every time I feel like the jaw should open.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I looked like a Pac-Man, right? So I really stepped back, and I had some good feedback from a lot of the animators who had been there for 20 plus years already.
Right.
Who were told me to simplify things and make sure that you could read it from an audience perspective, and thinking really about your audience and making sure they could read the lip sync and understand what the character was saying first and foremost, and not thinking about how many flaps you had to add to that jaw track. So I did that for all the StarCrafts, from Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm, and Legacy of the Void. And in between there, they let me get my feet wet and do actual character animation. So I got to work on the Diablo 3 cinematics. Was the first character animation I did. That last shot on my reel where I get to use Leia and caress dead Decker Kane's face.
Yes.
That was my first shot.
That's your first shot?
That was my first shot. It holds a special place in my heart. So I think it'll forever be on the reel for that reason.
Yeah.
But I blocked that out into twos. I think it was like a 300, 400 frame shot. And I stepped that thing out to twos because I was like, this has to be the best animation I've ever done.
Do you still do that, where you block things out into twos, or?
If I have the time to.
Yeah.
Yes. I think now with my personal work, I tend to lead towards stepping more so now. Because I had a big struggle. I think my posing overall had been weak for a lot of years. So I really spent last year and focused on what I was calling dynamic posing.
Yes.
And doing blocked and step mode really helped me out with that, and just really made me hunker down and focus on my key poses and making sure those worked before I moved to my spline mode.
Yeah, no, I actually completely agree. I feel like there's a transition that happens where you get too into trying to get the motion to just look right, and then I've, over maybe the last couple of months really, I've only just started going, okay, but if I like pause this frame here, like on a random spot, would I like that pose? And like thinking about it not just as, okay, sure, that arm moves right, or this hip controller moves right, but actually, what does the whole thing look like in various stages? And I think I'm leaning back towards, I think for speed, you start going, oh yeah, if I just go like work in spline more, then I can get a result really quick. And it's like, yeah, you can get a result way quicker, but is it quite as refined as if you do it and you keep to step more, and you do like really pick those frames where you can hit all those poses? And I think that's what I've started to realize more. So it's really interesting to hear you say that.
Yes, I felt, well, from my peers, a lot of the critiques and feedback I was getting was I was rushing into things too fast. Like I was getting into the details of overlap and tertiary, secondary motion way too fast, when I should be focusing more on my structure, my weight, and the silhouette. For in cinematics, like you're really working with what that camera looks, or what the character looks like in that camera view. Games is a little different. You got to make sure it looks good at all camera views. But with cinematics and movies, you can kind of fudge it a little bit more. Our supervisor, James McCoy, didn't like us to fudge it, and he would always hound on us if ever he saw us trying to trick the camera and have an arm all jacked up to make a good pose. So he really got me more focused on making sure it looked good from all angles. But up front, I was like, I need to get this done as fast as possible. I need to show them that I am here for the long haul and I want to learn. So I would just do things exactly that as fast as I could, when I should have spent like an extra week and a half on the shot. I was just
the same thing. I was like, guys, I'm done. And they were like, yeah, but take some more time. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And they're like, yeah, but take some more time. I didn't get it.
Elise, did you have the situation where also on top of all this, I'm looking around at these animators going, these guys have been animating at Sony for 10 years. They've been here for 5 years. Or that's like 15 years of experience.
Getting that imposter syndrome.
The biggest, 100%. I was the biggest imposter. Oh my goodness. I could not sleep at night going, I wonder how I'm going to mess this up tomorrow. They're going to figure me out. You know what I mean? I think it's
but you're a professional. You get to that level and then it just goes away, right?
Yeah. It's called professional imposter syndrome at that point.
It. Professional imposter syndrome. I haven't heard that before. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. It goes from being jealous of the artists at school that you felt were better than you. Now you're like, oh, now I'm seeing the professional artists.
This bar. And I thought I was good, but now
I was sadly mistaken.
Yes.
So yes, many years of that. But they let me get my feet wet, and I got to animate on some of the World of Warcraft machinima pieces for Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor. What are some of the other ones? I got to animate on the Overwatch teaser trailer with the boys in the museum. That was a big one for me.
Hanzo shot? Was that the one that I remember you doing? Or was that someone else?
No Hanzo shot for me.
Sorry, I think that was someone else we interviewed recently. My bad.
I think that might have been Chris McCormick.
Oh, yes.
Flat Tangent.
Yes.
My man. Another fantastic animator you should follow. Yes.
Yes, he's awesome.
What was it? Oh, no, I got to animate just the background characters of the people at the museum. As the boys were walking through the museum, there's a bunch of background characters doing their thing, and that was my big claim to fame. But at least I got to touch the Overwatch teaser trailer a little bit, and that was the last one I worked on. So I was in cinematics for about 6 years, and then I moved after that to the Heroes of the Storm team to work on Heroes of the Storm, and I got on there around
some beautiful animations coming out of that. My whole Twitter feed is just all these beautiful game animations, and they're
and
lovely.
I would just say, as you know, it takes a village to make those look pretty.
Yes.
Right? It's not just me making those look pretty. I had a lot of feedback from my coworkers and friends and supervisors and leads that really got me to that level. But yeah, I got the opportunity to do it. And again, I started off on Heroes of the Storm for the same reason of just doing face effects animation. They needed all of their portraits for the heroes to animate. And what they were doing right now at the time before I got there was just letting the computer simulation run what was kind of like a motion capture pass on the lines.
Sure. Like a Viziers type thing?
Pretty much. Yeah. It basically takes the wave file of the audio and it kind of predicts where it should throw.
It gives you a base to work with.
Yeah, a really nasty, terrible base to work with. Where you're pretty much just erasing it and starting over.
Yeah.
As our motion capture animators in the chat can feel.
Sure.
So I spent a lot of time just refining and doing keyframe lip sync to kind of prove myself that I could be a keyframe animator on the characters. And on the side at lunch, I would kind of play around with the Jaina rig and work on like a taunt and just kind of show my coworkers what I could also do. And eventually they gave me the chance to do Jaina's taunt animation. And I got my feet wet with video game animation for the first time, which was a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Going from cinematics to video games was a big change for me. I think the biggest one was the amount of time I had to work on animation
Yeah.
um,
We had to be a lot
severely
quicker.
decreased. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Did you
When,
find you naturally were better suited to the cinematics way of working or the gameplay way of working?
well, let me throw one more wrench into the system.
Sure, sure.
Cinematics was using Maya as their primary software, and then when I got to Heroes of the Storm, they were using 3D Studio Max.
No.
And I hadn't touched 3D Studio Max since college at this point, so that'd been almost 10 years. So the first 2 weeks was just me going, what the F is 3D Studio Max doing now? So I really took the first 2 weeks and just learned 3D Studio Max, how to use the graph editor, how to find all my hotkeys and what I like to set up again. And then I got to learn how to animate a video game character to the Heroes of the Storm style, which is a whole another enigma to figure out when you get to a new team, is figuring out their animation style and what they want.
Yes. It's something that I always worried about a lot when I was a student. It's like, okay, sure, I can work in this, my own little bubble. But then what happens when I get a character that's already been animated and they have a personality and they have all this stuff going on, and now I have to make something completely new that still fits with that character, with that other person's animation style. And I think it's a big challenge that a lot of people go through whenever they join a new studio, and you'll get it in the animation department, you'll get it in the audio department, you'll get it in the character department. Everyone has to get used to that company's specific look and feel of what they're going for, and it's interesting that that's a thing that we have to deal with.
Yeah, very much so. And nothing I thought about coming into it. I was like, oh, we're just going to animate some loops.
Yeah.
I'm going to do some walk cycles, do some attacks. But
pose 1, pose 2, done.
Yeah,
right?
Be done. 30 frames. This is going to be a snap. This is going to be a snap.
Goodness. No more lipstick.
And quickly, right. Yeah. Quickly, I realized, like, oh, okay, so you want to animate a taunt for a hero that's already been done. Cool. Yeah. But now that hero has 12 skins behind it. And all those skins
and shoulder pads out to here.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And if I raise these arms, then suddenly he doesn't have a head anymore. Wait, what?
Yeah. And this one has feathers under the arms. This one doesn't have feathers. This one has a feather on her face. You know. So I learned really fast that even though I thought it was going to be easier, quote unquote, there's a lot more involved with video game animation.
That's interesting.
And that's not even touching the tech side. When you start importing your characters to an engine, doing the troubleshooting. I think my first week I submitted a local file, which basically, when they make the build for the game the next morning...
Oh, you didn't break the build.
The build is looking for that local file only on my machine. So when everyone loaded the build the next day, that all crashed, of course.
Yeah, so anyone who doesn't know, when we talk about breaking the build, it's like... It's almost a rite of passage, but not in a good way. Like, everyone at some point has broken a build. I've done it. And it's basically, when you work in a big company, you'll get these builds where it basically makes the game, the latest version of the game with all the updates, and usually you have to be quite careful about what you submit, because if you don't submit all the files that the engine is calling on, let's say you tell the game, oh, I'm going to add this new animation, but then you don't submit the animation file, but you do submit the game file, and then everyone gets the build, and then suddenly no one can work, because the build's broken, because it's trying to call on this one file, and everyone's like, who's broken the build, and it's this big thing, and it's a whole thing. But everyone's done it
in
at least
hindsight,
once.
If you want to know who the lead tech artist is real fast,
Yes.
you can just break your build and they'll come find you.
Yep, there's nothing scarier than being, I think, an intern or an associate coming in and there's already 5 people at your desk, and you're like,
I'm popular today, aren't I?
Yeah, did I do something good? And they're like, you, and you're like, no.
Well, I did something.
Yeah,
I did something, yeah. Yes. So yeah, it was, I think I ended up animating at least the portrait lip sync animation over 40 or 50 heroes total since I was there. And most of those have over 100 lines of dialogue just for the English version. We have 13 languages that we deal with, but I only touch localization if there's a severe problem with it. Like if this line looks really messed up, I'm going to be like, okay, I can speak Portuguese today. Let's try it out. And just do a quick run on the Portuguese
It's going to be really hard to... I remember at one point thinking about animating something that was like in Spanish or something, and I was like, how do I, that doesn't know Spanish, get all the right sounds? Because like your mouth placement's different, everything looks different. So how do you get
100%.
all of the, like a native Spanish speaker is going to look at it and go, that doesn't look right. That
Obviously, a non-Spanish speaker did
Right.
this one. So what we would do, we send out a flare, and our flare is the QA localization team
Yeah.
that tests all the localization builds. So when we were doing Heart of the Swarm, we were also responsible for animating the most of the localization lines for the in-game cinematics. So we would have the French tester come by, the Portuguese tester come by, and we would just show them like our first pass and be like, hey, what looks weird, what
Right.
shouldn't be here, do I need an extra vowel here, more mouth there? And we would just get their raw feedback. Even though they didn't know animation,
Yeah.
they knew if
They were
that was
like,
French, they knew
what's
if that
all this?
looked like Portuguese. Yeah, 100%. And that was really our own fail-safe, so to speak, was
I remember
talking localization.
someone said something that I think it might be like Pixar or DreamWorks or someone brings in like hearing impaired people and to see if their lip sync is good, because if they can't tell what they're saying and they read lips, then obviously it's not good enough. And you know, I never thought about it from that perspective, that someone who, you know, might be deaf or something is trying to read this you know, this make-believe person's lips, and if they can't tell what's being said, then I don't know if that's true, but that's like a rumor I've heard that that's a thing, that they're checked to see if their lip sync's good enough.
That'd be a good use for it.
I know, right?
I was given a piece of advice from my supervisor. Was what he liked to do was animate lip sync right on the button at first, and once you get it all polished, you bump it back 1 or 2 frames. This is from James McCoy, and he said that when you delay your lip sync by 1 or 2 frames, it tends to be easier for the audience to read and pick up what the character is saying. I've tried both. I feel like the delayed frame or 2 feels better.
Yeah.
But whether or not, as an audience member that doesn't know animation or lip sync, if that's better or not, I really don't know.
Well,
but I've been using that as a trick.
Yeah, I was told that it's because you have to make the mouth shape before the sound happens.
Okay, yeah.
So if you know, if you actually slowed it down, the mouth shape has already happened before the sound, which is why it has to come first for it to look right. Otherwise, it's like, well, why that looks odd. But the way I've always done it, which I'd love to get your opinion on, is to do my reference and then to copy the timing in that. Do you think that's a good way of doing it, or would you still just write on the button?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think with all reference, you gotta have a little give and take, because
Sure.
you don't want to follow one to
No.
one. But
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent way to start off, especially for me. It's getting those jaw open, exaggerated moments and those quick snap.
Yes.
I feel like when I was doing Heart of the Swarm, the biggest things for me to sell a pose was to get a good mouth open and a mouth sealed pose on an MVP. Anything like a or a buh. Make sure you have like a frame or 2 of that mouth sealed to really read it.
Yeah.
And then to really sell those S shapes when the air is escaping through the teeth. And
Get
getting
those
type of
phonemes
V
right.
shapes.
Phonemes,
Those were
PHO, right in chat.
Yes, yeah. Those I think those really sold a lot of my longer VO lines. Was just getting those really nailed down.
Man, I'd love for you to do like a masterclass on lip sync, because you
oh my goodness,
probably be
There's
amazing
so many
at
better
it.
people than me.
Yeah,
So many better
but
people
there's
than me.
always,
Ugh.
you know, you gotta, you've been working Blizzard 15 years, all this stuff, you gotta,
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
sure
I put
you
it on the
could,
list.
there's some stuff you could teach and pass down. By the way, I forgot to mention at the start, I think, but if you guys have any questions for Kurtis, then feel free to write question in big bold letters in the chat, and your question, and we will be getting to them at the end of the interview. So, quick tip. But yeah, did you have some more stuff you want to talk about, or can I start peppering you with questions?
You absolutely can start peppering me. So I'm now in. Let's finish it up with this. So I'm now off of the heels of the Storm team. They had a very large transition that happened, and now I'm back into the QA game testing world again. 15 years later, trying to get back into animation. It has been a mind trip. What is awesome though is, it was such a wild west type of mentality back in 2004. We're trying to test this massive game with like 20 people.
Yeah.
And now the QA team has over 100 plus people.
Yeah.
And now to give a kind of a difference of what development thought of QA back when I started to where development thinks about us now. When I got a bug in 2004, if a developer wanted to come down and see the bug, they couldn't come to me. They had to go see my lead. There was no development interaction with anybody that wasn't a lead in QA. Now we have QA teams embedded within the team. So they're with the designers, with the artists, and they can kind of work hand in hand with them, which has been a massive improvement.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing for us was always communication. There's always a breakdown of when is this coming into the game? Oh, it came in late. Oh, it's in now. We didn't know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And that rarely ever happens anymore.
Yeah.
And we have all these great online checklist system. I don't have to use paper checklists anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have to test just one game. We test every game that Blizzard makes, which is awesome. So I'm not stuck to just testing World of Warcraft for 8 months of my life.
Yeah.
I can test Overwatch this week, Hearthstone on the phone this week, Diablo Classic on this week, and it's been really cool in that respect. But I still want to get out and animate, y'all.
Yeah. Are you getting itchy?
I'm ready. And you know, my team's been really good about giving me a lot of the art-centric QA tasks. Like, hey, this new thing came in, go check to see if there's anything broken with the models, the skinning, the animation, the textures, etc., which has been very nice. But of course, you can't always give me art tasks because then it looks like favoritism. So
Right.
I get the buffet of QA tasks, from checking installation disks to patching to the whole deal. So I'm ready to get back into the art only tasks, if you would. As much as I love my QA team. Burst team, I love you if you're out there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Something that I'd love to ask you that is something that I get asked a lot and I don't really have an answer for is you are someone that has come from QA, and it was always said that if you wanted to get a job in the games industry and you had a very specific title in mind, or even if you didn't, going to work in QA, which is quality assurance, the guys who basically run through the game, make sure there's no bugs and things are working smoothly and all that kind of stuff, and basically feedbacking to the developers, oh hey, this stuff's broken, because you know sometimes you don't have the time or you're just not aware of someone else has updated something that's broken something. So I always get asked, oh, is that still a thing? Can you still go and work in QA and work your way up? And I never know an answer, so it'd be really good to hear your opinion on it as someone who did do it 15 years ago, and is that something that's still an option for people today?
Yes, I believe it's still a viable option, but you also have to look at the company at which you're looking in to get into QA, because not all companies keep their QA after the projects. Blizzard is very nice in the fact that they keep a full-time QA team on at all times. Places like EA, I've seen in the past where they stock up or they hire up for a big push on new basketball or football game, and then once that's out, they cut 50% of that team, leave the supervisors and the leads, and then they refresh the lower end testers. So I think I didn't know that back then when I applied because I was just 21 and was trying to get into the industry. But I got lucky. If you want to get into QA, it's a fantastic foot in the door because you learn how the game is made from the ground up. You may not be working on the art side or the animation side or the modeling side that you want to work on, but you're going to be working on in the game as a developer, working with the development team. And like Elise said, you're giving feedback to the team that can either improve the game, and you might even get like your feedback implemented into the game where you'd be like, hey, you know, this spell could use this more damage for this reason. And like, you know what, Kurtis, you're right. Let's change that. And then boom, now you've got Kurtis's Wrath spell in the game. So there's cool moments like that, and the biggest thing for me was just networking. I met so many people because you work with all the development teams from production to art to design to programming to engineering, and you meet everyone working on what you're working on. And as the game progresses and you have more interaction with these people, and as new positions come up, they might think of you as like, hey, you know what, Tim, you know, I've been working on animation at home. Mind if I hit you up with a question about I'm having this problem with a spin, and you just, you know, pepper them with some critiques and feedbacks here and there, and just start making friendships. And that was the biggest thing for me. Like I said, the last year of my QA in 2008 was because of a contact I made in StarCraft Ghost QA, who ended up getting hired into cinematics. Was like, hey, Kurtis, we've got this position. I think you'd be perfect for it. I know you're animating on the side. You should give it a try in an application. Like, you know what, Scott, that sounds great. And I wouldn't have known about that position because they didn't put it out on the internet. There probably wasn't too much internet back then.
Yeah, because a lot
But
of companies will try and hire internally or will try and see who people know before they'll put it up online. Like they might say like,
yes.
"Oh, if you guys know anyone before we put it up," so a lot of the time there's like a chance to kind of pre-get in, and if they find someone that's really good without advertising online, then sometimes that can be a quicker, cheaper way of doing things. So, yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, and nail on the head because they already know your personality.
Right.
They've worked with you face to face.
You're already working in the
that
games industry. You're already part of the game making process and everything else. Yeah, that's.
I wonder at
nice
times
to
like
hear.
I wonder. I've never been a hiring.
Oh, I think we lost your audio for a sec. Oh, say something again.
Be there.
Oh yeah, you're
Check,
good again.
check.
Sorry, say that bit again.
I say like I've never been a hiring manager or anybody in a hiring position, but I've always wondered if they hold higher the fact that they know the person face to face, or do they like the real more? Like, what's the end goal? Do you feel like you would want to hire this person because you know them face to face, or because their work is just that awesome? And I feel like it always leans toward the personality
Yes.
and can you work with this
Yes.
person?
Yeah.
Um,
So one of the guys that I knew who worked in QA and then moved to one of the core teams. One of the things he said that I thought was really cool, because I haven't had the experience of working in QA, and I was like, oh, this is something that a lot of people look to do, but I feel like there's an impression that it's not necessarily as available nowadays. And I was like, what is it, as someone who does hire for QA and also moved to a different team, what was your perspective on it? And I remember he said, just make sure that when you get to QA, you do a really good job of being QA. Like, don't be the guy that's just there and is always talking about trying to transfer and trying to like whatever. Like, you want to go and show that you can do a good job of the job that you've been hired for, because you don't want to make yourself look like a bad or look like too big for your boots. Like, oh, this is beneath me to do QA, or oh, I really want to be doing this other thing. And because people who get into QA, the people who are hiring, they want to see someone who's going to work hard at the job they're doing, not at whatever else it is. So the best way you can progress in something like that is to get in and to do a really good job at QA. And then I knew a guy who was QA, and he came in early every morning and did animation, and like every day I'd go past and see him working on animation, and at some point I just kind of stopped over and I was like, oh hey, like, are you part of the animation team, because like I keep seeing you work on animation stuff, and he was like, oh no, I'm actually QA. And I was like, oh, that's really cool that you're coming in early and doing animation. Like, if you ever need any feedback or help, and if you're in QA and trying to like make that leap, feel free to reach out to those people in the positions that you admire.
Yes.
Because they're not gonna maybe not in the middle of the day when they're super stressed, but like if you just say, oh hey, like I'm in the company, but I really want to be in the position you're in. Could you take a look at my stuff? I've got some characters I've made. I've got some concepts that you're directly communicating with the people who know what it takes to get into that position, and that's not a small thing. So
No, not at all. And if you happen just to be in the kitchen or the smoke break
Yes.
area, you've got your portfolio
Talk
out on
to
your phone,
people.
just by chance.
Oh, what?
Hey,
What is that?
yeah, I work on the game team or QA, but I also got this too. You want to check it out?
Yeah.
It never hurts. Never
Yeah,
hurts.
or even if you just like go and attend like social stuff, and people are like, oh,
Yes.
who are you? What do you do? And oh, I'm this, and oh, you've been working on stuff. Oh yeah, I've got some couple things, and they're like, oh, show me. But it's networking is such a heavy,
Yes.
like weird term, but it's just about making friends and
Yep.
putting yourself out there. I think being in the right place at the right time, but increasing your chance of that, I guess, to be in the right
Yes.
with the right people.
Yeah.
That's really
And in
that's
the
really
end-
lovely to hear. Sorry.
Yeah, no, in the end, I just say that don't hesitate to apply for a game tester spot. Because I coming out of school, my demo reel was not ready for industry work at all. So I got plenty of rejections. My first probably 10 submissions I put out on my old VHS tape.
Yeah.
And I thought QA was my last ditch effort, and I kind of walked into it that way. What I quickly realized is you learn how the game is made, and there's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that. Because now when you
Yes.
get into finally the position you went to school for, you've got all this experience
Yes.
from a tester standpoint of like, hey, look, when I'm making my animations or making my models, I know I can do this to save QA work down the line,
Yes.
which just makes your work that much better, which
Yep.
makes the production and the pipeline that much smoother. and it just makes you noticed in the long run for being that much of a team player.
Yes.
You learn a lot about teamwork and being a team player in QA. I think you learn that being in the game industry in any position. But you really learn about relying on your team and your friends who know more about the game you might be testing. That was my case in the beginning. I had never played an MMO, so I was like, someone who's played an MMO, please come sit next to me. Yeah, I needed everything I could get. So it does not hurt, and don't look down on game testing jobs if that's what you want to do. There are other options if you want to get into production. I've seen a lot of people go from QA to production roles. And I've seen a lot of QA testers go into design roles because you are learning the ins and outs of these design systems that you're testing. And you have to go talk to the designers and be like, look, you want to test this new gym that's coming out. I need to know exactly how it works and what I can do to mess it up. And then you know their entire system. And you can be like, hey, you got a design spot coming up in 6 months. I know I can do your job. It's beautiful. It's nothing wrong with applying for a QA game testing spot, I think.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it sounds like stupid to talk about, but, you know, we do talk a little bit about soft skills, which is another thing that, you know, soft skills, it sounds, you know, lame. Everyone's like, oh, here comes, like, the PowerPoint presentation about how we all have to be friends or whatever. It sounds stupid, but, you know, it is those things that make you seem better and are a better person to work with. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is it trains you to be a better communicator, because you have to, you know, very quickly get across what's wrong, what's not working, communicate with teams, and you also have to communicate with a lot of different areas of the studio, right? You have to talk to the designers and the riggers and the animators and whatever area you're looking at to find who owns that issue. And you know, I think, you know, you're bettering your communication skills, you're learning about all the different departments, and something that I always keep coming back to is that I think you can be a really good animator and just focus on making your Maya stuff or your motion builder or your 3D Max stuff look good, and that's going to make you a very good animator. You can be a very good animator doing that. But if you want to be a really great game animator, I think some of the things that I always see that stand out are people that can have the bigger picture and the bigger game in mind, and it must give you such like an insight into, this is how I play the game, and these are the things that frustrate me, and oh, this thing would be really cool if I could get to the point where I could do this. And I think actually having that experience to sit down and play the game and find out what frustrates you and where it breaks that's a big thing that you can use to your advantage.
100%. And I used that a lot when I first got into cinematics, because no one in cinematics had worked with games per se. They were all coming from motion picture studios like Sony and Blue Sky and all these places that didn't really have to worry about getting their final frames into a game engine and making sure that it triggers properly. So I would be the one on our team to test all the in-game cinematics to make sure that they would trigger on the right spot of the game, make sure that there weren't any like extra blank frames running in front, yada, yada, yada. Now, without that QA training, I would have never thought to look into that. I've been, well, let's just throw it over the fence and hope that QA checks our stuff and it makes it through. But you can't rely on that. In QA, they tell us, if you find a bug, bug it, because you don't want to let it go in hopes someone else will catch it down the line. So whether it's been bugged 100 times already, if you see an issue, report it, because in the end, it's just going to help out your team and your project.
Yes, 100%. Right. Yeah. Well, that's enough for QA. Although one more thing.
Hit me.
How? So you did get to the point where you could get out of QA. Like, that sounds terrible, but your original goal was to be an animator, and you achieved that. So what was something that you think that made you stand out? So that you could get to the point where you could be on the animation team, so that when, you know, the opportunity presented itself, you were ready for it, I guess is what I'm saying.
That is a good question. I'm going to say two things. Number one, networking. Again, we come back to networking. I had met so many people that ended up getting hired into cinematics after the StarCraft Ghost merge. That I just kind of kept in touch. Was like, hey, how's the new team? What are you doing these days? What are you guys working on? Can I come by and see what you're working on?
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, what?
Yeah, exactly. Just keeping in touch. You know, not being pushy.
In an honest way, not in not in like a fake. Yes. Oh, it's so great, and they're like.
Yes. And then the second thing I did was, my friend's gonna attest to this one. I told myself when I was in QA that I wouldn't buy myself any console until I got an animation job.
Okay.
So this is back when the Xbox original came out, like old, big old black box Xbox, like brick version.
Oh man,
So
that was great.
I would work night shift till 4 a.m., go to the gym till 6 a.m., go home, animate until 11 a.m.,
Oof.
and then crash until 6 p.m. the next night.
Hmm.
And that was my 4 years, is just making sure I had this disciplined schedule of working, going home, doing the animation work, and just keeping up with the skill. Because I realized quickly when I got to college, I'm like, I'm gonna have to keep working on animation. I
Yeah.
can't just pretend that now that I'm out of college, everyone wants to hire me.
Yes.
It's obvious that my reel wasn't strong enough to get any job.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to keep at this and make a goal for myself to keep pushing myself. And I felt like there's a stigmatism in QA where you can easily get locked into QA as well, where you just get into the task, you start moving up the QA chain, and now you find yourself, you
As
could
a
be a
manager
producer
or
at this point. Exactly, a manager or a lead or a supervisor.
Yeah. Do you
And I've
really
seen
want to
that.
go and start again in a new thing and right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had to use that motivation of not getting a console to make myself to continue to animate at home to keep pushing towards that goal. Because I didn't want to be, not that I didn't think producer was a position for me. I just didn't feel like I
You
was going
didn't
to
want
be
to lose
satisfied.
sight of the original
Yes.
goal that you set for yourself, which there's no shame
Exactly.
in that.
No, or the tens of thousands of dollars I put into this education that we
Yes.
just did. But that was the biggest push for me, was just keeping myself motivated and giving myself a schedule, keep myself on the path. And then I think in the long run, it's all about luck and when the position is available and you're the right person at the right time with the right interview and the right reel. One thing that Twitch has made me realize is how many talented animators and artists there are, and I'm speaking to one of those right now. There is so many people to watch and to learn from who are doing
Which is lovely
podcasts
now,
and tutorials.
yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic!
There's so
I can't
many
even
people,
think.
like, even our own, David, I always get his last name wrong, Pumpa, is it? I
Called
think, yeah.
Shrill Llama.
Yeah,
Yep.
Shrill Llama on Twitch, and there's a ton now. I remember when I originally, before this show, I was using Twitch to try and motivate myself to animate, which I think is what a lot of people do, and it started making me realize how different people animate. I was like, oh yeah, everyone uses the structure that I use and blah blah blah, and then you actually watch people animate, because no one ever shows people animating because it's long and it's boring and
Yes.
everyone just wants to see the end playpast or whatever, right?
That's right.
Or like, this is my blocking, this is my spline, blah blah blah, I'm done. But when you actually watch people animate, it's very curious how differently people do it, and I think that's really cool, because if you just ask one person how they animate, then they're going to give you a very specific way of doing it, but actually like seeing all the different ways that you can get a great result out is, you can find out what works best for you, and I think that's really cool.
It's cool to think about that animators have different paint strokes, so to speak. Like you can
Yes.
watch
Oh,
10
that's
different
lovely.
painters, and they all have a different way they paint, different way they
Different
apply the
strengths.
paint to the 100%.
Yeah.
And I think animators, though, we have the same parameter that we work in. Like we all have a start, a middle, and an end idea, I think.
Yes.
But the way that we get there is all unique and
Yeah.
us.
And it
how we
changes
get to
as
that
well, over
yeah.
time. Like, I definitely did not. How I animate has definitely fluctuated, and I've added bits in, taken bits out, and yeah, I'm sure
Yes.
everyone's done that. And you're actually being very humble yourself, and getting this vibe
please.
from you that you are. But
please. We're all students of the game still. All
sure,
students of the
but
game.
I want to give a big shout out to Kurtis's website, because he has started doing something very fun, which is his own podcast, similar to this show. I think you get people one-on-one, and drill them on how to be a good animator and all kinds of stuff like that. So check out his site. I already posted it up on the channel, but it's thebrokentangent.com,
Yes.
which
that's
was
correct.
what I originally wanted to call this show.
I'm sorry. I got on the ball a
Yeah.
little quicker.
Yeah, you did like 10 years quicker, I think, so
Oi.
that's fair
Oi.
enough. I was like, oh, I bet no one's thought of this really fun. Oh yeah, they have, but it's okay, we're off
Never.
tangent in the animates. But yeah, you should definitely check out his site. I can't wait to see all the other bits that you put up on there, because at the end of the day, I remember someone saying, oh, why are you trying to compete with Anim State? They've already got like way more stuff than you. And I was like, it's not
Yeah.
a competition.
No.
This is just like more free resources for animators is never a bad thing. So 100% go check out Kurtis, and go follow him on Twitter at The Broken Tangent as well, because
thank you very
he's
much.
always posting
Yeah,
cool
it's
stuff up.
all about the community. Like,
Yeah,
you're right. Like,
it
why you
is.
want to compete with Anim State? No, we're just trying to add to it and
Right.
just make more outlets for everyone to check out. Because I can date myself again. Back in 2001, when I was in school, kids wearing a pager, I had zero internet
Yeah.
sites I could look at. I think 11-second club might have been a thing back then, but
Yeah.
it was super rough and super new.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, MySpace. If someone had a MySpace with animation on it, maybe we could look at something, but it was really there for us to check out.
I think there's a
So
really
it's,
lovely vibe that a lot of people in the industry realize how hard it is to get in, and also have so much to talk about like there's all this stuff to talk about how to get in, but there's also so much stuff to talk about where, like, we're all asking ourselves, like, how do we get better? Like, do you have a better idea? Like, you know, and I definitely want to ask you that as someone who's got 15 years experience. Like, how do you think you improve as an animator who's made it in the industry? You know, how do you keep pushing your skills? Because that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like, well, I'm okay, but I just went to GDC, and it's like, oh wow, I thought the bar was here and I was here, but actually the bar is like somewhere, can't even see it anymore. And it's like, oh well, crap, now where do I start? Do I just, you know?
Every year, GDC, and now with the Anim Boot Camp, it's just like, center me, humble me, center me, and humble me all at once.
Yeah.
But I think you're on to it. Like, as we get further into our careers, what do we look at for inspiration to make us better? And for me, it's been the communities that we're establishing now with the Animates and Anim State, Tea Time Animation.
Oh my god, the people at Tea Time Animation and Anim State, got to meet a bunch of them, and they're just like some of the nicest, most super humble people that you'll ever meet, and it just kind of blows my mind that you know, it was nice to have the validation that not just animators, but like art directors and character artists and concept artists and all these people I got to meet, because it was my first time going, and it was so nice to see that all the people that really do well are very similar, actually, which is why it's so easy to find people like you and people like the people we talk with, because everyone's kind of got this cool vibe. It's like when you first go to uni and you're like, oh, you're all like a bunch of dorks like me. Cool. We all have a thing in common, and we all love animation.
Like me. Thank you.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Finally, I fit in.
Yeah, 100%. And you got to meet a good friend, Lana Bashinsky, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. She's.
Let me tell you about
how
I got better. Was listening to that lovely woman.
Yeah.
I would literally ask for Lana. I would ask for a critique from her at least twice a day.
Ooh.
At least.
When you were an animator, or?
Yeah, when I was animating on Heroes of the Storm with her, it was her, Karina Kingdom.
Dude, just like, hey Lana, you're
I
awesome.
was sitting in the murderer's row of animators. Yeah. And I'm just like, I need to ask more questions. Because the first week was just me learning 3D Studio Max, but as I got more involved with it, I was looking at how they were animating their heroes so fast, and I went like, I need to learn their process, because I was taking 2 weeks to do these shots of maybe just a close-up fidget for cinematics, where they're taking 2 weeks and animating 60 animations for a hero. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there is no way I'm gonna be able to keep up with this. So I was talking to Lana, Karina, and Michael, and my supervisor at the time, Eric Hinza, every day as much as possible, just to get tips, tricks, tools, whatever I could.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lana, her ideas and her creativity is so wonderful. She comes up with so many cool ideas. It's just hard not to be inspired when you're around her. And it goes with all the animators that are in Anim State and Tea Time and all these. It's like so many good people.
Oh.
And that's where I pull a lot of the inspiration from, is these people who have been doing it for 20 plus years, or maybe not even that long, but just have these great ideas, these great workflows you never thought to do or try.
Get choked
or
up.
even get on Twitter. Like I think
Fucking
Lana
Twitter.
did a speech, was it 2016? It was like the first Anim Boot Camp year. And she did a speech about just putting yourself out there and getting on social media and meeting this community. And I did not know what Twitter was. I'm this 30-plus-year-old man going like, you kids and your Twitters.
Yeah. What's this tweeting business?
Yeah, what is that bird? What do I need this for? So I think I got on Twitter 2 years ago. And
I think I was about the same, where I started seriously using it. And the cool thing is when I like went to go see all the people hosting the boot camps and stuff, I'm like, I recognize you. And then I'm like, I have them on Twitter. And I recognize, and then I was like, oh, wait, I already kind of know everyone in this room because they're all on Twitter, and I already follow them all. And it's like, I'll follow you on. Nope, I already got you. And it's like
already
buying a ticket to this weird little niche community of wonderful people, and that's great.
Yes, yeah. I think there's too much inspiration to draw from now because we're all so globally connected. Like, at least to think about it, 10 years ago, this would have never happened.
That's true.
Like this conversation. You're in the UK. I'm out here in the States.
I'm not actually in the UK anymore. I'm in Canada now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
As
right
of
on.
8 months ago, I think.
Nice.
9. So I don't know.
Okay.
It's been a whirlwind. Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And a good
but
one.
I love how now. Yes, a good whirlwind. That's the best. Everything is global now. We all have access to each other, to what our ideas and our thoughts on different animation techniques. Like, this is a lovely time to be alive, I feel like.
Yeah, and there's also so much stuff that's out there for free now, I feel like. Where I feel like we're starting to have a bunch of communities that aren't gated behind paywalls and stuff. And I think that's meant that, like, I think we were talking last week about seeing how much debt people are coming out with CalArts, and someone made a really good point that it's like that's going to really hurt diversity because people are not in certain areas are not going to be able to afford to come out with that much debt, and if they think that's their only option, maybe they won't even try. And I was like, oh my god, yeah, I didn't even think about it like that. Like, when you consider that kind of thing, it makes a difference, and it's nice.
I'm very torn on the state's university system out here and how much debt that they put us in to start, but at the same time, I feel like I came out of school with a lot of good information that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that now there are so many online cheaper options with just as talented, if not more talented, people teaching them. So at least there's options now. But coming out with debt is no fun at all. I'm finally done with it.
Wanted some more options? We talk about a bunch of them on the last week's Animates, which is not up on the website because I've been super busy, but it's all up on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But you were saying a really lovely thing about, before you went off on a very nostalgic tangent, which is why it's called Off Tangent.
Hey,
roll credits.
That's right. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, goodbye. You were saying a lovely thing about talking to your colleagues for tips, and I would love to know if you could remember any of the things that you were told that you kind of remember.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Can you give us just give us a rundown of?
One of them. So I had the opportunity of being the primary animator on Blaze for Heroes of the Storm. He was the Firebat character. So this is my first opportunity to do all of the animations for a hero. And they're like, okay, here's 60 animations. You've got 6 weeks to do it. And I think I damn near hit the floor.
Wow.
So I got a lot of tips during this time. And of course, the biggest tip I'd say from all of them was to get it in the game as soon as possible. So I sat down with my mentor at the time, was Michael Cuevas, a fantastic animator. If you're not following him on Twitter, you definitely should.
Say that name one more time.
It's Michael Cuevas. Last name's Cuevas.
Cuvas. Cuvas. Is that right?
Cuevas.
Michael.
And he basically showed me some techniques just to throw down like 2 or 3 keyframes on the entire rig just to get some movement in and start feeling things out from there. Especially with the walk, because in Heroes of the Storm or any MOBA, the biggest animation you see, or you would see almost 100% of the time, is the walk or the run cycle. So I think I spent 2 weeks out of the 6 weeks I had just working on a walk cycle. Many walk cycles: fast to slow, heavy to soft, staggered to non-staggered, charismatic to flat. And during that point, it was a lot of just Mike going, hey, how about we twist this? How about we twist that? And it was really just showing me quick ways that I could pick the entire rig, move 1 or 2 keyframes around and get a different feel, and just to test out a lot of things really fast.
Yeah.
Because of that type of schedule, is I'm sure you know, the faster you can get stuff in the game and the faster it's reading, the more you can spend on those tiny detailed notes that make it really sing
and you
make
don't
it really
you don't
epic.
waste your time focusing on a bunch of details that are ending up getting it cut anyway. And I think it also helps that if you like gives I did this with the Wisp abilities I had to do this week, which was to make like 3 versions that were just super gross looking blockouts and throw them in game, and they were blocked, and you know, there were stepped anims, and there were 3 of them, and I was like, which do you guys prefer? And that took like half a day to do that. And then now you when you get the feedback of, oh yeah, this one's working better, you end up with such a stronger piece of work, because when you do for a final those details, you already know it's going to look great at the end, because you've already seen it in game and gotten everyone's approval, and you can get through so many more ideas like that. I think that you end up with stronger stuff at the end. Would you agree?
Yes, I would 100% agree. And my backwards thinking when I was in cinematics of going, I need to get all the details in as fast as possible, would have been so bad for me to use as a process with Heroes of the Storm, was I would have just focused on details. My 6 weeks would have been done. I would have had like 10 animations, if that, instead of roughing out all 50 as fast as you can, getting them signed off in game as ideas, and adding on layers of details from there. The biggest thing I learned through that process as well was stakeholders. Finding out who your major stakeholders are. For me, it was the main designer of the hero and my animation supervisor and the art director. So as long as those 3 signed off on my idea, any feedback or critiques that I would get outside of those 3 stakeholders, I would take as just ideas.
Yeah.
If I didn't have time to get to them, that's cool. My stakeholders are loving the idea. At least I know they like it.
Yeah.
At the same token, that also opens it up to a lot more ideas too, because they can be like, hey, I would send out an email to my entire like art team list. Hey, here's some quick animations of Blaze. Let me know if you guys like this, don't like this, something feels weird, hit me back. Yeah. And you can just get a bunch of cool notes from there.
And that means you can start working on the next thing.
Yes.
While people are giving you feedback, and then when you get back on, you can just kick right off, and yeah. Cool.
And you'll never have that like that sinking feeling of, man, my art director hasn't signed off on this yet. Yeah. Should I keep going on this, or should I move on to something else to be safe? I learned a lot about that, and I learned a lot about timing and trying to figure out what it takes me to do certain animations. I am terrible, I feel like, trying to be like, hey, production, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do XYZ. I mean, it's going to take me 8 weeks. I mean, do we got an extra 2 on top of that?
Yeah.
So that having like a set amount of animations I needed to do at a set milestone date was very helpful with trying to figure out, oh, I can do this in 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh, this is only a half a day thing.
Yes.
That was very helpful.
Yeah. Cool. It's you made a comment about you would focus on the details and stuff early on with the cinematics
yes.
versus the gameplay. Do you feel like it was almost you then went from working backwards to forwards in a way, because with the it just sounded like with the cinematic stuff you were kind of looking at, you know, where do I find that juice where it really sings, and then like making that work for everything else, whereas with the gameplay stuff you were like, no, I have to get this as crappy looking dirty ideas, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Is that what you were kind of saying, or?
I think so. And on top of that, like I had this, I don't know, there's this overlooming idea that Blizzard Cinematics has these epic animations, and they're all keyframed. They don't use motion capture, so all the hair, the cloths, all keyframed.
Even the cloth?
So to me, for the most part, yes. There are some cloth that they do run simulations on and hair, but the animators have controls for all the cloth and hair if they need it.
Sure.
But for me, when I got in there, and this being my first animation job, I was 24 at that point, like, I'm losing my mind. Like, I need to, whatever I make today, tomorrow, the rest of my future here, it needs to be the greatest thing ever. So I would, like you said, just go straight to spline, add secondary, tertiary, overlap, hair, cloth, and I'd show it to my lead. He'd be like, dude, your weight and your timing is terrible.
Yeah.
Like let's
Let's
stay away from the hair.
yeah.
Yeah, let's stay away from the hair, cloth, and face, and just focus on the COG and the legs for
Yeah.
now. And that really that really helped me focus to do, I think, the faster in-game stuff in the long run. To be like, okay, let's just get legs, hands, COG, and throw it in the engine and see how it goes. One thing I didn't also consider going from cinematics to in-game is animation compression.
Yes. Oh.
And that's something that I don't know if students or if you've talked about that yet.
Not
maybe a
like
little bit.
fully. I think we
Yeah,
mentioned
it's kind of a niche
about
thing.
why it's important to get it in game quick and
Yes.
briefly, yeah. But go ahead.
So for those that have never heard of animation compression, when you export your animation, all the joint animation information from Maya or Max into your game engine, the engine will compress those joint animation keys or that animation information, which then sometimes results in skipped keyframes. Your animations might have pops, or it might not loop or connect anymore, and you might have to fiddle with the actual animation file to mess with the compression. In Heroes, I think we had 3 options for compression. It was like full, medium, or low. And we always picked low because we wanted as many keyframes to get in there as possible.
Yeah, right.
But there was always issues if you had like an object in the hero's hand and you wanted to keep it still and planted on the ground. And that compression would just make that thing pop and jiggle everywhere. And you would go in the animation and everything is constrained to the ground or constrained and parented properly, but the compression would just destroy it.
Yeah.
And that was something I'd never have to deal with in cinematics because it was just boom, or render it straight from my file and you're done. So
Bliss.
yeah, bliss. It's easy.
Easy.
Easy peasy. So there was a lot of things that still, I think I felt I had on lockdown when I got into the game side, but then there was just a whole new world that I had no idea about. That really, I think, has just made me a better animator and a better technical artist in the long run.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's so great that you're... I mean, even though you've had what some could describe as a fairly straightforward... Like, if you look at your LinkedIn, it's like, yeah, you did like the star pupil route into, you know, everything, but you've been able to work in all these different areas, and I could see how that would make you kind of invaluable because you'll have so much more knowledge and experience in these areas that other people don't have as much, you know, experience in, and then over time you've also worked super hard at getting your animation skills up, so it's like, oh, I can compete on this level and this level and this level, and that all feeds back into getting better animation. So that's really cool.
No, we try. There's still so much to learn. I think rigging is still such an enigma to me that I need to get deeper into it.
Yeah.
But instead, I just watch people on Twitch rig for now.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to learn.
Like, oh god, you know, having that animator's Achilles heel of like, I want all the animation rigs I can find.
Yeah.
Especially if they're free. But just to have that knowledge where I can just take any character and put a rig to it, I need that. And that's my goal, I think, next year, is to learn more about rigging.
Oh, nice. If you're starting from the basics, the book I always recommend is Rig It Right.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it's good for getting your groundwork in, basically.
Right.
So it teaches you how to build a full character, but it starts you off with what the hell bend deformers are and what constraints are and why this is important to do it this way, and then it slowly builds you up to IK change and rib and spline and blah blah blah. But when I remember when someone, I was like you, I was like, oh, I need to figure more about rigging out, and someone recommended that book to me, and it was a really lovely way of learning for me because it was very visual and it was very step by step. It was very much like, let's start you on this, you know, where I think sometimes people are like, I'm going to show you how to build a whole character, and it gets very confusing because you're like, I'm doing all these things but I don't know why I'm doing any of these things, and it does a really good job of taking you through, this is why what's good for this simple thing, and this is like a way to upgrade it, and then now we start, you know. So if you were ever needing like a basic, get all the basic stuff in where you can have a character and it works, it's perfect, I think.
The more hand holding, the better for me, I think.
Yeah, it was good because it Rig It Right is exactly, Rig It Right. It's got a blue bird on the front. That's like,
oh, nice.
yeah, it's Yeah, it's lovely because it really takes you through bit by bit. So I always recommend that. And I got to the end of that book and was like, I kind of have everything I need to know if I want to be a basic rigger, like a basic animator who knows how to be a rigger.
Yeah.
Basic. Like, no, I'm not going to be able to go and get like a job as a rigger right off the bat. If I wanted to get any better at this like skill tree, I would have to start learning scripting, because there's a bunch of stuff that, if you can find ways of automating it, you know, there's like so much knowledge, and then it's like, okay, at this point I need scripts to do this basic boring stuff.
Yes.
Like when you do hands, it's like, oh my god, I have to do this how many times, and gets super annoying, and there's a lot of functions that you have to do over and over and over again. It's like, okay, I either go down this route and start learning scripting and how to automate stuff to be a better rigger, or I focus on being a better animator and I'm good with the knowledge. So I never got beyond that. That was my reasoning. But
that is the question. Like, do I focus on some rigging or continue down this path of learning more animation?
I think
and
if someone got through that book, I personally think that's all you need as an animator.
Okay.
I
didn't realize how much I should know.
Yeah.
We touched on it in school a little bit, but it wasn't until I got on Heroes and they're rigging my Firebat hero up, and they're like, hey, Kurtis, what do you want on this rig? And I'm like, make it move, dog. Can you just make sure I can animate it nicely? I don't know. Put an IK control there, maybe put an offset there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was more like I just need to play with it. It'd be nice where I've been like, okay, let's add this chain here. Let's add this offset here. Let's add this IK parent system. Yeah. But I think, hindsight, had I would have known more about rigging, I would have probably been a lot easier to work with on that phase.
Yeah, I think it's those two things that I think are the most important that you get out of rigging, because as an animator you have to work with rigs if you're in 3D.
Yes.
Like, there's no way around it. You're going to have to work with rigs, right? And if you can communicate better with the rigging department about what's broken and how to fix things on your end that are minor issues, that aren't big rig problems, that's very helpful. It saves a lot of time. If they're super busy and they can't get to something and you have a workaround, that's happened a lot of times to me, because they're very busy people, bless them, because everyone wants a piece of them.
I love my tech artists.
I know, right? Then that's really helpful for that communication. And also I found it really good for speeding up animation workflows. You know, there's some artists that are very artistic, some animators that are very artistic, and some that are very, very technical, and I've started to see why the technical side is important, because it means that you can get some of the basic stuff in very quickly and have more time for the artistic stuff. So just getting down and dirty with some constraints, I think, saves a bunch of time. So
it does. I'm learning slowly.
Yeah, but I don't presume to know where you're at. But if you needed a basic book that gives you everything you need to know to build a character, then I really recommend that one. That's a lovely book.
Yes, it's going to happen. Thank you.
Right, so I think, unless you have anything else you want to talk about, what I usually do is I do like a little recap, where I've been taking notes about all the stuff you've been saying, and I try and wrap it up in a nice little bow, and people can... yeah, well, you haven't seen it yet, but I've
got faith. I got nothing but faith.
I love it. I still choked up about all that. Just having a conversation about getting to talk about all the cool animators doing all this cool stuff. But yeah, so now is your chance if you're in chat and you want to ask the man some questions.
Talk to me. I see A
use
to the J in there. Banana animation. My goodness, everyone's coming out.
Yes. So now's your chance while I blather on and try and wrap stuff up to ask some questions, and we will try and do our best to answer them. And of course, please do follow this lovely man on Twitter, and check out his website because it's great, and I can't wait to see his podcast that I didn't know was up yet, but I'm definitely going to watch it and follow him for all the good stuff, because yeah, we need more of it, and it's great that this is a professional animator that's got no time, and he's taking the time out to give you free stuff, so use it well. Okay.
No time.
Here we go. So he's at the Broken Tangent at Broken Tangent on Twitter, and the website is thebrokenTangent.com. Fuck, I really fucked that up.
No, I tried the same on Twitter. I was so upset I couldn't get the Broken Tangent on Twitter.
Yeah, I think Animates is still
Mm.
like at the Animates one because someone's
Yes,
already
yeah,
got the
yes.
first one. Ugh, whatever. I'm not.
Yay,
Anyway,
technology.
so feel free to jump in with any of the stuff I'm going to say if you've got any additions or things that I didn't quite get right. So I think
Okay.
one of the main things I got from this was that QA is 100% still a valid option of something to get your foot in the door, and I think that's a really nice way of putting it. Is that it is a way of getting your foot in the door, and as much as that's like a cliche, it's real, and getting that first job in the games industry is fucking difficult. And if you can get anything, even if it is a QA role, you're going to be connected with all the people who are working in the industry. You can get like hands-on advice. You can learn. It's a good way of learning the game, of learning communication, of networking, and you should 100% go for it if that's what you're into. Um, One of the other things I've written down is that gameplay has a lot less time for animations than cinematics does, and that's something to, I guess, bear in mind as what you're getting into. If you, I personally, I remember have recently been asked, oh, do you want to be a gameplay animator or a cinematic animator? And I was like, oh, I have to choose, and it's like, yeah, that is kind of how it's going. People are getting that specialized, and I'm like, oh crap, I don't really know which one I'd prefer. So that's kind of interesting to hear, because I really like that in gameplay you get a lot of like, you can really like craft how something feels. You play it in game and you're like, and then when you get it, it feels good, and then it's nice that when you get a cinematic, you can really focus in on those details and really polish and really get something looking good. So yeah, that's.
I will add this.
Yeah.
I was in cinematics almost coming up on 10 years ago, and I know a lot of their processes have changed. So I wonder if the amount of time they have on the shots are still as long, especially knowing that the cinematics team that works on the Overwatch shorts, they render all of that with Redshift, and Redshift is super fast because it's a GPU renderer. And I know their scheduling has shrunk because of that rendering software. So they might have less time than what I did back in the day.
Sure.
So it might almost be within comparison to video game animation now, but I'm not 100% sure. I should ask Chris
I would
McCormick
doubt
that
it,
question.
given that you've got to get through the amount of animations you have to get through.
Yeah. I'll be curious now. I
Just
should go ask somebody.
Just even the amount of detail usually that is expected from a cinematic thing versus gameplay. Like I know there's like this weird rule that everyone kind of adopts that's like get it to 80% done, and then if you get a chance, get it to 100% done with gameplay, whereas cinematics, that's not really an option. It's going to be looked at, and it's got to be like refined to a certain extent, so there's got to be more time for it, otherwise you just
especially with face animation,
get the quality. But that's all good. And yeah, you mentioned that it was more involved than in cinematics, which is really interesting to hear as someone in the industry looking at that stuff. We talked about lip sync and about how you're a bona fide expert at it, and I can't wait to see your tutorial / stream / podcast / whatever you end up doing on lip sync.
Yes, face effects stream, here we come.
Yeah, I feel like people are like, oh, you put the phone names in, you move it back 2 frames and you're done. And I remember a bunch of people at GDC saying, oh, it's so annoying how many students and how even like professional animators have terrible lip sync. And I'm like, well, how? I'm trying. But it's so hard to get right. So can't wait for that update. How do you see? That's my own notes. Don't rush into things too fast when you're animating. Look at the structure and the weight and the silhouettes. Don't try and look at all the little details. Try and focus on the big stuff first and get it in the game quick, because that's where you're going to make all your decisions and you're going to save a bunch of time. I love the whole it takes a village to make it look pretty. I had no idea where you were going with that statement, but 100% made sense.
Yes.
I think it's lovely that you mentioned about getting up from your desk and maybe taking your headphones off and maybe talking to people, because I feel like that's very intimidating. Not even just when you start somewhere, but or even if you've even like years into the game industry, you don't want to bother people, and you know people are busy, and you don't want to be that person like, oh hi, can I borrow you again?
Yep.
So it is difficult to rationalize taking someone's time, but at the end of the day, you're a team, and you're going to make each other better, and you have. You know, you walk amongst gods in most studios. There's going to be someone that's been in twice as long as you, or whatever it is, or has a completely different set of skills and strengths than you do, and you're not going to be able to see that in your own work, and it's worth taking the time to learn from them, even if it's annoying and taking away time from their projects.
Just shoot them an email at lunchtime and be like, hey, at lunch you got like 5 minutes to check this out.
I'll buy you coffee. Or maybe a donut. If I give you this cookie, can you give me some time?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my god, yeah, that would definitely win me over. I'll buy you a latte if.
Yeah, that's right.
You look at this thing.
2 if I get a critique and LinkedIn feedback.
Yes. And also I think it's worth saying that as much as reaching out to your colleagues is great, don't also be afraid to reach out to people in your network that you know. Like, reach out to, you know, if you're in QA, talk to people in the studio and like make contacts, and you know, don't be afraid. You know, I asked recently for someone that I met, and I was like, oh, I'm looking for advice, blah blah blah, and you know, most people are more than happy to help, and even if they're not, even if they're too busy, usually you'll find someone else who is. So this is a lovely supportive community, and if you really need to have some questions answered, or have some work looked at, you can find someone. You just have to have the courage to ask.
You can ping me if you want to.
At
Broken Tangent on Twitter.
There we go. So break those tangents and go bother Kurtis.
Where is our drum roll?
I know, it's terrible. I'm like blushing right now. I have so many bad jokes. It is. It's
tangent things too easy.
We need to have like a off tangent meets broken tangent, and the tangents can tangent it up.
You know, I met Chris McCormick at BlizzCon, who's flat tangent, and I think the world almost exploded when we met and like shook hands. It was really close. I felt a movement or a shift in the force.
I like it. We just got to get all the tangents together, and maybe then we'll be on something. It'll be like a whole thing. So when you're thinking about lip sync, simplify and think about your audience. What was it you meant again about that? I've written to think about your audience with lip sync. Oh,
for lip sync, yeah. Just making it readable for your audience.
Oh, right.
Keeping it simple, simplifying where you can, and just getting in the phonemes or mouth shapes that you need for the audience to know what you're saying.
Don't do all mouth flappy.
Yeah, don't put in too much.
Everyone always does that when you're starting out. Stepping on twos and focusing on the posing, because we were talking about how there's a point, I think, where everyone's like, oh, I can just get the motion and it looks fine, but if you really keep it in step, then it hurts. I know it hurts, but if you keep it in step longer, then you can really focus on the posing and getting that right. And you know, sometimes I even flip back and forth. I don't know if you do that, where you're like, you see it in spline and you're like, okay, this movement's kind of what I want, and then when I'll like start working on the movement a bit, and then I'll jump back to steps and be like, okay, but is the posing right? And it'll bridge that gap between making it work for both. Have you done that?
No, so I've always called the step where you go from the stepped blocking mode into spline mode, I call that the dream killer, because it basically kills all the dreams you had in step mode, and now you're in spline and everything's just like, what was I even doing? I tend to, once I feel comfortable enough to hit that auto spline button, I end up staying there. I live in it, and I just cover myself up in the filth that I've created for myself, and just try to find my way out.
That's fine.
We're dealing with that right now. I've got this 360 spin attack I'm working on, and I am just knee deep in auto spline right now.
Oh my god, yeah. And also fucking gimbal lock. I just had like an animation I did where there's two characters, and she has like an ethereal thought form, and it like breaks apart, and then they spin around and then come back together, and oh my god, the gimbal lock.
Did you see the gray hairs that just spawned on my head right now?
Oh my god,
yeah, that
it was a
great.
Whole thing. I mean, it was fun, but it was like, I'm gonna work on this bit, and then I'm gonna use my little tool that rejigs the curves, and then now I'm gonna have to work on this bit because this is the bit where it breaks, and then I can rejig it again, and the whole thing. But anyway,
let me go back to that though. At least you find that it allows you to see where you're going in spline mode a little easier when you go back and forth. You just kind of keep track and make sure you're staying with your stepped mode idea.
I don't do it that often. It's more as like I'll go fairly far in stepped, and then sometimes I'll like go to spline and see if it's along the right track, and sometimes I feel like, oh, there's this bit that I wanted that isn't reading right, and I'll instead go back to blocked because I don't feel like it's ready yet or it's not working right, and then it means that I don't rush ahead to try and start polishing bits up in spline. So do you know what I mean? It's like you can actually see it. Yes. Sometimes I feel like even if you block in twos, which I've definitely done, it's definitely great. You can still, you know, with like the frame rates and stuff, you're like, is this something I'm really seeing that's an issue, or is it just that my eye isn't reading it right? And then you go in spline, and you're like, oh yeah, it's shit, and then you go back, and then, so you know, sometimes I have like a bit of an ease into the oh god, it looks like shit, and then all the way.
I only killed half my dreams this time, not all of my dreams.
Right. It's like alright, okay. But what else we got here? Focus on the posing, not just the motion. We already talked about networking and communication. I like the give yourself rewards thing about, you said the having your Xbox console was like, oh, I'm not gonna give myself this cool thing until I reach this goal.
How much I had to hear about Splinter Cell and how cool Splinter Cell was on the Xbox.
Animate.
Yeah, I've got Maya's Splinter Cell.
Yeah, exactly right. And to give yourself a schedule. Something that I thought was interesting is like I keep hearing, like I've done a couple of these interviews now, and other people on the Animates have, and it's interesting that I keep hearing there's this like one bit in animators' lives that have done really well where they just went a bit mad and went a bit hardcore, where it's like, oh, for like 2 years I just became a zombie and blah blah blah, and it's interesting that keeps coming up where it's people are always pushing themselves, and that's great, but I feel like a lot of people went through this period in their life where they really pushed it, and that's been interesting. It's happened enough times of people I talk to now to be like, I feel like to get people over that edge of being, I can be here, maybe it's
I feel like if you can get that stuff out early in your career while you're still young and have the energy for it, more power to you. As you get older in the teeth, the late hours get a little rougher to do, and then you just come to find out, like, after 10 or 12 hours, I'm just not as productive as I was at the first 8 hours, and I'm not getting, I'm either hurting the work that I'm doing, or I'm not really doing any work, and I'm just a body in a chair. But, and then another token, if you're getting paid overtime, you know, it's hard to not make that money and I have no time to spend it at the same time. It's rough. I don't do the crazy OT anymore. Right now, we've been lucky. It's all been voluntary for the little bit of OT we've had recently. But if I don't get at least 5 to 6 hours of sleep, I am just a wreck these days. So I really believe in taking care of yourself, especially mentally. And even when you're at work, like taking a good 2 times a day, or you're taking a 15-minute walk and just getting away from the screen. It's amazing the ideas and the things you'll think of when you get away from the screen and just kind of think to yourself.
You get a refresh and you come back and it's great, and just having that little time to actually connect with people and see what they're doing is lovely. So by the way, I have a question to ask you at the end of this to nicely wrap it up before we go into questions, and you better be asking some questions because this guy's a fucking legend, so you get that rolling. Talk to your colleagues for tips, we already covered that. Get it in the game ASAP, focus on the most important animations, whatever your game is like priorities are, focus on those.
Yes.
Compression is a bitch.
Finding the animation style.
Find out who your main stakeholders are, so you don't waste. You figure out, I guess, how much weight to put on certain feedback.
Yeah, that was like you're saying, that was a way for me to separate what feedback I should implement and what feedback I should just take as an idea, and not necessarily put into it.
Yes, because I think there's a point where everyone gets to where you're like, okay, I have to call it done at some point, and this person's suggestion is cool, but that would mean completely restarting it. So is it an art director and it's like, okay, sure, you're right, I will restart it, or is it someone who's like, look, you had a really cool idea, but we're going with this idea because we don't have enough time to just restart everything.
Yeah.
So, like, if you've got questions, if you've got like feedback on polished, great. But if you want to like completely change everything, like, it's too late for that. I'll remember for next time or whatever.
I feel like it took me years to figure that out. To again in cinematics, if I was getting a critique from anybody in cinematics, I was putting it in my animation
Right.
because I'm like, man, you've been here for how long? Okay, you've been animating for how long? Yeah, I definitely obviously this in my shot, and I would get I'm gonna call it bloated. I would just bloat my scene with so many ideas that there was no longer a clear action. I was trying to fit 5 ideas into this one reaction shot
And it
when I
gets
only
muddied.
did one. 100%. And I ended up having, deleting most of it and redoing it. And it's just something you learn as you go along is deciphering and filtering critique and feedback is a art form within itself.
Yes. Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about giving feedback, because we went to so many cool feedback and critique roundtables, and I was like, oh my god, I've been doing this completely the wrong way. And it's interesting because I feel like the way you're taught to do it at uni and the way you're given feedback at uni is completely unhelpful and unproductive in like a work scenario, and it's going to be a whole thing. So I'm excited about that, because it's a skill that is really tough to learn, and also there's no like rule book on like how I'm supposed to do this stuff, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things I've been doing wrong that I don't think I would have just learned on the job. As
far as you approaching critiques with other people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which, like, for example, they were talking about how instead of going over and, let's say, me saying, like, this pose is bad, the shoulder needs to be higher and the arm needs to be in this position. Like, actually, like, doing it, you're taking away their artistic interpretation, and you're better off like saying, okay, what was the intent of this? Okay, well, I feel like the impact isn't working, so how do you think we could change that so then you're like working on it as a joint venture,
problem solving.
You're also like teaching them to fish, and it's not just I have a list of stuff to fix and I'm gonna have to come back to you for every single time because I don't know why it needs to be like this, it just does, and all that jazz. So that's going to be a fun one. If you want to join, you're more than welcome.
That's going to be a good one, yeah.
Don't hesitate to apply for Game Test to Work, because it is awesome. If you find a bug, bug it. And yeah, I think that's most of the stuff. So, going to stick to questions in a sec, but the question that I didn't even get to looking at my main list of questions because we had so much stuff to talk about, but one of the ones I always like asking is, if you could give some advice to a younger version of yourself, what would that advice be?
I should have been prepared for this at least.
You can take a second while I look through some questions. Yeah.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay.
It would be easily, don't get down on yourself.
Oh, that's nice.
And I think it goes hand in hand with the imposter syndrome. I think every single year I was an animator team I was on, there wasn't a year where there wasn't a stint of imposter syndrome that happened to me.
Yeah.
Where you work with, once you get into the industry, even when you're not in the industry, you're just in your art college or your university, there are people that are just better at what you want to do.
Always.
And you can either take it as, I'm never going to get to that level, woe is me, or you can take it as, I need to talk to that person and learn from them to get to that level. And I think a lot of my early career, especially college and my first years in cinematics, was I'm never going to get there. There's just no way that I can get to that level. Because I thought to myself, like, well, obviously they came in working at this pace and this speed already, not thinking like, well, I'm sure they learned a lot hands-on job and training and somebody else that kind of mentored them. So for me, I think it's not to get down on myself and to maybe get out of my box socially a bit. I was very much closed off, I think. And again, it goes back to just being nervous and not wanting to bother these artists and these talented guys that you've been looking up to, not knowing you've been looking up to them, but looking up to their work for several years. And now you're finally in it with them. And you still feel like, I don't think I can talk to this person. I'm going to bother them, or it's going to, they're going to get angry at me. And just getting past that initial shyness and I don't know, just get the stars out of my eyes earlier, I think would be the end of it.
Oh.
And walking around with the stars in your eyes going like, this is just the
Yeah,
best.
wow, everyone's so great, wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I'm gonna get found out and escorted from the building, fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
I was talking to a friend, and I think a really nice way we found to put it was also that it's like, I think when you first start getting that fear and doubt, you're like, oh, well, when I get to this level,
Yep.
I'll be good. And then you're like, okay, well, I got to that level, and I'm still terrified. So you're like, okay, well, yeah, when I get to that level, the next level, then I'm going to relax. And then I think the thing is in this industry, you kind of get given a bit more than what you're capable of doing, right? It's like if you say like, oh, I can do this thing, they're like, okay, well, we'll give you this thing, and you're like, oh shit, and then you're like, and then if you prove yourself for a bit, then they're like, okay, well, now we're gonna give you this thing, and then that might be like better work, that might be more important work, that might be managing people, that whatever it is, there's going to be a new thing that you can conquer, and that is like, oh yeah, this is like the whole company's riding on this one animation, so don't fuck it up, and you're like, oh fuck, okay, and I feel like there's always going to be that next level to hit, right, where you're not going to be comfortable, but that's where you make your most growth, and you wouldn't have been trusted with that unless you had,
Proving yourself.
Right. There's a reason why they trusted you with that thing, and you've just got to realize that that's not some random thing. That's they chose you specifically to be hired for this job or to be put in this position because you've been doing kick-ass stuff, and to recognize that you're doing good, but also that you're never going to be the best, and that's fine, because that means there's always something more to learn, and that's a good thing.
We are all students, no matter how far we get into our careers. There's always going to be something to learn, especially because it's technology based. Huh? Oh yeah, never stop learning.
I love that. That's great. I always like to do that because I feel like everyone has a very personal journey into the industry, and I think some of the talks I give to myself would just be like, you don't need to worry so much. Like, because I feel like there's, you think about how much you stressed about stuff versus just doing stuff, and it's like, you could have just, I mean, obviously you now look back and you think, yeah, I would have been fine. Maybe that wouldn't have been the case if you weren't that stressed, but,
Yeah, and I feel like when I talk to a student who's in their like last year of school, like face to face, you can feel and you can hear the stress in their voice of getting that first job. Yeah. I think we put so much stress on ourselves for that first job. I
was like, if I have to go back and work in like Tesco and stuff, and I have to go and admit to all my friends and family, like, I'm going to go be an animator, and I'm going to go to, and then you end up back in the same place as everyone else, and you're like, oh.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with cutting canvas trying to be an animator. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. And just
I cut my fingers several times doing that job.
And it's the realization that if you work hard and you get what you want, then you do great. And if you work hard and you don't get what you want, that doesn't mean it's over. There's still, you just have to keep improving, and you can still find other ways in. And I always, for some reason, assumed that, if that didn't work out, then that would be the end of my life, and that's it. And oh fuck, I just failed. And it's like, nope, that's not how it works. Is you can, just because you're working in Tesco or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get in the games industry. It's just you just have a different path, and that's cool. Let's take some freaking questions.
Bring the questions. Bring them all to me.
I think that's Banana Animation. Banana Animation.
Hey, Banana Animation. Anna Banana.
Oh, Anna Banana for fun. Hi Kurtis, hot. I feel like I'm hitting that mid-level wall. Any advice on keeping your work fresh and not plateauing? Would love to hear the answer to that. Because I am hearing that question right now. I am feeling you. I am there with you.
Well, let me start this off by saying, for 10 years, I was an associate animator. Okay,
really?
So I understand the mid-level plateau, and I never reached anywhere over that mid-level plateau. Okay. But what I would say, as a personal goal, what I set for myself was to work on animations that I'd never done before at home. Maybe I'd never done a quadruped walk. Maybe I'd never done a 360 spin attack. And it really helps me to push myself and keep myself with new ideas and give me the sense of personal growth, which then I can apply at work and try to make like, okay, well, they gave me an attack animation, but let's really amp up this attack animation as something they've never seen me do before.
Yeah.
How do I really amp up my work to show that
Yeah.
I'm no longer this mid-level animator? Like, yes, I can do all your walks, attacks, hearths. I can do it all for you, but now I can do it with an A+, so I can do it with the epicness that Blizzard or High Res or whatever wants.
Yeah.
And Anna, your animations are fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
So
What are you
I
worrying
think that,
about?
yeah, what are you worried about, girl?
I like
I think that
I wanna,
the
like,
more
clip
that you work on your own stuff and the more that you just push yourself and get outside of your comfort level, that's the biggest thing for me is my comfort level. I would stay in it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Oh God, you want me to do a 360? I've never done that, but
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'll try. And so now I'm trying to step back at home now that I've got the time to and do animations that I've never tried or I've never felt comfortable doing in a work setting. And just trying to work on my skills from there.
Yeah. Can we
And
just
I
get
hope that
the "What you worrying about, girl?" as a sound
What you worry about, girl?
I need that
Anna,
on
you
like
so
a button.
good.
I love that. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
I would, because I'm at the exact same position you're at. I think where you kind of like, I gotta get to this level, and this level, and this level, and then when you kind of start getting to it, you're like, holy shit. Well, fucking now what? You know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sport out there for, oh, you're a student, come and I will help you out. Or, oh, you're an intern, I'll come and help you out. And then when you start getting to that, like, middle bit, you're like, well, how do I go from being a good middle whatever to, like, these people that I still really admire? And I think what I've started to learn from a lot of advice from some very talented people is that when you no longer can see what you need to improve on in your work, that's the time to kind of step back and stop animating for a bit and to play some games and talk to some people and get re-inspired again, because I think I was getting to that point, but then like GDC really took it to that edge where I'm like, I can now see where the difference is now. Like I was looking at my work and I was like, I know this isn't the best, but I can't see where I have to go from here. And then taking that step back and going, I need to just figure out where my next goal is, and you know, even looking at some other interests, like you said, like rigging and drawing, and until that inspiration train hits you like a motherfucking truck again.
Exactly. I think you hit on the
to
head.
get
Like
back in it.
inspiration really helps out. Like
Yeah.
if you just go watch something that for me, if I go watch the Animatrix, that was one of the big things when I was getting through school. That back then was like my fuel.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how did they get these characters so real? How did they get that movement feeling so real? And that really kind of ignited my fire again and pushed me to my next
Oh
level.
my god, I'm thinking of the
plotting.
Animaniacs. That's definitely not the right thing.
Oh, I love the Animaniacs too. That
I was
use
like,
that too.
realistic and with the no, okay.
When I was watching Yakko and Dot,
Yeah. I love the realism.
really got into it. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
But yeah, and but in animation, I hope that helps, and just keep pushing on with what you're doing, and just keep working on
We're
it.
sending out those good vibes because
Yeah, and nothing but positive energy for you.
yeah, we're in the trenches together, so yeah, it's good to know you're not alone, and that there's
Yes,
you
not
can
at all.
keep going. Cool. Right, what else we got here? So, ngreeny623 says, I'm in VFX animation and I'm interested in getting into game cinematics eventually. Other than game engine mechanics, what else should a VFX guy know about getting into that side of the industry? So, he's in FX, he wants to be game cinematics eventually. What does he need to figure out?
Man, the top of my head, I feel like VFX translating into game cinematics is going to be a plus for you. Because if you're wanting to get into cinematics specifically, you're going to be dealing with locked cameras, lighting, maybe some compositing in post. I think the biggest thing that I would say you might want to learn is just picking up a free game engine like Unity or Unreal Engine 4 and just playing around with their cinematics system. Most game engines have a system that you can set up cameras, where you can set up triggers where it cuts from one camera to the next camera, and maybe just learning how to break down cinematics in an engine instead of working on it in like a 3D software like Maya or Nuke or something like that. Just kind of learning the ins and outs on how game engines are with the in-game cinematics. Because I would feel like with a VFX background, you know about mine, you know about compositing, you know about animation, lighting, character modeling. I think the lacking information is going to be mostly technical engine stuff, I feel. But that's just my caveman artist answer.
Yeah, and I feel like that sort of stuff you can learn. So I feel like the most, like every studio is going to be on a different engine, and you're going to have to relearn that stuff. And having a leg up with that kind of stuff is going to be cool. But I think you would hopefully agree with me in that if you have a really badass effects reel, the animation is probably going to be pretty solid because of the kind of studio that you're in. And I think the thing that I would be worried about if I was trying to recruit someone like that is like, okay, why do you want to work in games? Like, you've got all this VFX stuff. Like, what is it that makes you want to be doing this? And I think if you had some more game-like stuff that you could show, or even if you could just come across in interviews as being super passionate about being a gamer in that company, I think that would go a hell of a long way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the interviews will go for anybody. You don't have to be in the VFX industry to make that interview good.
Yeah.
But you having that background of VFX is going to be a step up, I think, on others applying with no experience, I would say.
Cool.
Just learning the technical side, I think, would be the biggest challenge you've got ahead of you.
I love it. Right, what else we got? We got Illuminal. Is that how you say that? I think it's Illuminal. We'll go with that. You mentioned how you felt your peers were creating animations much quicker than you at some point. Do you have any advice or things you learned on how to increase your speed with game animation?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Again, going back to setting like 3 keyframes, one at the front, one at the middle, and one at the end, and just getting like one kind of motion in so you could get it into the game as fast as possible to see what the animation looks like. That really sped my process up. Because one, you can find out timing. Is the timing of your animation going to work with the engine speed you're trying to work with? For example, for my run cycles, the first hour, I would throw in just a COG and some leg plants, just the foot plants, and that's it. And just see, does that work with the engine? Does that make it slide? One of the things that I really put to use was just our third-party tools. When you go into a studio, technical artists are more than likely going to make awesome tools for you to use, and they're there for a reason. Use them. There are several tools that I had on the Heroes team that would help me animate offsets faster, cloth faster. I could copy and paste animations from one side of the body onto the other. So a lot of tools that your tech artist will make will also help with that when you get to the industry as well. And then the last thing is just practice. The more you do it, the faster you're going to get. The more of a workflow you'll establish. Like if you've got an attack, a death, and a walk cycle to do, and you've been doing those for 5 years, you know how exactly those are going to take for you to do and how to start it and finish it. Practice is the unsung hero, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. I 100% agree with all that. The other thing that I have kind of learned over the years is also that whole 80% thing. That I was talking to a bunch of colleagues that do the same thing, where it's like, how quickly can I get to 80% done? Because it's the detail stuff that takes all the time, and a lot of the way that a lot of the people in the team work is to get a bunch of your animations done to a certain level, whatever level you think is appropriate, and then use whatever time's left to polish, because no matter what if you have to get those animations done, at least you have something done, and then any extra time is gravy. It's kind of how I got a lot quicker, and again, it's mostly, I think, practice for me. Cool. What else we got? A to the J says, Kurtis, can you briefly discuss your focusing on one thing side of animation every year to improve your skills?
A to the J. How are you doing, first of all?
I like it. I like it.
fellow channel, Broken Tangent channel follower and animator. My thing, now I've only been doing this for 2 years. I've been really focusing on yearly goals, separating them out from animation goals to personal goals, what have you. Last year's goal was focusing on dynamic posing. And to do that, every animation that I did for my personal projects, I really focused on step mode and just working on posing, looking at references online via life drawing, maybe doing quick 15-minute poses offline, and just practicing strictly on posing. This year, my goal is cinematography. So I got a book called Shot by Shot. I'm working on my camera movements, focusing.
Shot by shot.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an older book, but it comes highly recommended from a lot of people. It's a lot of theory about what the art director does in film, and what production design does, and what storyboarding is, and how much storyboarding can help you in your pre-visualization process.
Wow.
But I'm trying to get more familiar with framing and cinematography and all aspects of camera.
Wow. Nice.
So what I've been doing every year now for the last 2 years is just breaking down goals and what I want to focus on and get better at, and just putting a milestone date. Like, hey, 3 months in, I'd like to have a single shot with one character. Maybe at the 6-month mark, I can do a 2-cut shot with 2 characters and just practice on my cinematography from there.
Have you seen the cinematography of God of War GDC talk?
Oh no, I need to go back and see. I didn't know you had to pay for the GDC talk, so I'm gonna have to wait a little bit until.
Do you not get it at work?
No, I'm a QA tester now. At least they don't give us GDC stuff. Oh
my god.
But yes, I need to go back and watch. I'll find somebody who has access and just borrow their account.
Yeah, that guy is just getting to see game cinematics from the perspective of a dedicated film. What's the technical term for a guy who does that? Director of photography.
Yes.
Type influence was.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for whatever that noise was.
Hey. Hype
noises. Was just mind blowing, because I feel like animators have this real laziness with the camera, or at least I do, where it's like
35 millimeter.
Yeah, fuck it, this camera, whatever. Yeah, exactly. And he was like, you can change your focal lengths to give different emotions, and I was like, I've literally never done that in a single. Fuck, that's actually really important. And like, not that you've seen the talk, but one of the things he mentioned was how important it was for them to do a live action previs. And how if you do the camera in Maya or in some 3D software, that it just feels so ungrounded. Like, it'll move quicker than a normal person, it will find angles that a normal person would never feel comfortable doing, and it will just feel weird. Whereas if you actually did live action previs, it gives you this grounding, that's where you should start. Not when you do previs, you should do live action previs, not like a in Maya one. And even the crazy ass shots they did, where there's like people falling from it, they did that all fucking live action. Wow. They didn't just go, oh fuck it, I'll just shove a cat. No, they like live action did it, and you see the live action stuff they did and the final stuff, and it's not that different. Like
almost 1-to-1.
Yeah, it's close, and it's. I don't want to give the whole talk away because I don't know, get sued by GDC, but
no.
It's it kind of blew my mind a little on how little I've cared so far about the camera and stuff.
Just humble students of the game, y'all. Yeah. Humble students of the game we are.
Yeah. Cool. Have we got any other good stuff? I think we're good for questions. I think we do, and we've also taken up a whole 2 hours of your Sunday, so we should probably let you go. But yes, Kurtis Paddock. Go check out his Twitter and his new podcast that's out on the brokentangent.com. Which is awesome, and thank you so much for coming on the show. It was lovely. So thank you so much for having us, and being whatever the word is, I don't know. But
Elise, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. Thank you for everybody coming out and asking questions and hanging out with us today.
Yes,
I couldn't ask for anything more. This was great.
Yeah, great questions, by the way.
Yes, very good questions. I hope I was able to help somebody out with any questions or feedback. Or again, if you guys got anything you want to show or are scared to show anything on social media, you can DM me on the
Yes.
Twitter sphere at Broken Tangent, and I give all
Be
the
right
free
back
feedback
while I
can
just
possibly
send all
listen.
my work to.
Yes, Elisa Gamer, she might be blocked at this point with as many times I might get a critique, but I guess I'll let one or two through. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'm going to stop taking up so much of your time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
And
Appreciate it.
thank you, Kurtis. And we will see you next week for what I think is going to be a talk on giving and receiving feedback. This one is going to be slightly more targeted at people who've been in the industry a bit and people who may be looking at being mentors or leads, but also as well as students who are perhaps not getting very good feedback and how to communicate what better feedback is. And I feel like we all are in an industry where we get a lot of feedback and critique, and it's going to be a fun one because there's a lot of stuff that I've taken away from talks at GDC and roundtables about how art directors have found out the best ways of doing this stuff, and it's going to be a good fun discussion, and maybe we'll drag you on as a guest at some point for one of our discussions in the future. But until then,
Yes, please.
I feel like I should stay animating, keep doing the animates. See you next week. Bye guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.